Good evening, everyone, and welcome to This Week from Rockdale. And I'm your host, Larry Cox. And it's good to have everybody out here viewing the show tonight. Let me say hi to a few people. We've got Marie Withers here, we've got Dan Burks, we've got Mary Bosworth. Thanks for joining the show tonight. Everybody, I want to tell you we're going to have a great show tonight. We've got special guest tonight, Brett Malden, and he's running for Senate District 17. And I'm going to bring him on right now and introduce him to you folks. Hey, Brett, how are you doing this evening?
Doing excellent, Larry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, Brett. You know how it is. It's Sunday, and everybody's had a good day of worship and family time. And I know, especially you were glad to be with your family today because you've been gone for a whole week, and I know it
Yeah,
was tough being away from the wife and kids that long.
it was, but had great traveling mercies, and that's always the best thing to have, right? God on your side.
God on your side. I agree 100%. Well, Brent, let's get right to the meat of things here tonight. Let's go ahead and let people. Let me just ask the first question: Who is Brett Molden, and why are you running for the state senate?
No. That's a great question. People ask me that a lot. So I'm a family man. Been married for be 16 years in January. Have three beautiful children. 10-year-old son, almost 8-year-old daughter, and then a 5-year-old daughter. Been a businessman. I've been working since I was 11 years old in construction. My dad started a business in 1989 down in, we really focused on how to serve other people well. So we've grown the company. We've been able to add a lot of team members, help them grow. But in doing that, I keep seeing the government taking more and more, and our representatives representing us less and less. Um, so when we started looking at why we wanted to run, I felt God was calling me into it about 2 years ago, and it's really odd because I don't trust politicians. I don't like them. I don't like what most of them stand for. Most of them are only after their own selfish desires, or whether it's financially, how they can benefit them and their families financially, or how they can benefit themselves with more power. And I didn't want that. I was fed up. I just wanted to be served, and that's it, right? I just wanted to have our elected officials serving who they were supposed to, and I got sick and tired, and I knew it was over with. If we didn't do something about it, if we didn't take a stand, then we weren't going to have a conservative state anymore. It's slipping more and more and more away from us. Our representatives aren't representing us, and I was just sick and tired. And what my dad would always tell me is, if you're going to complain and not do something about it, you're just whining, and nobody likes a whiner, right? So what we started doing is just looking at it and saying, if it's going to be somebody, it's got to be me, right? God's blessed us with certain things, and we certain talents, and we just want to serve. We want to be able to help the next generation. Because when I look at my kids, they're not going to know the same Georgia that I was raised in and born in. They're not going to know that. They're not going to have the opportunities that we had, because God forbid a Stacey Abrams receives the election for governor. If we don't have politicians with a backbone to stand up to her, they're just going to walk all over us. When I saw the election fraud that was happening, clear election fraud, and it's either catch 22. You either believe there was a no election fraud and you overlook all the evidence, or you just didn't have a backbone to stand up for it. There's one of the two things. There's either no election fraud, and that's what you believe, or you believe there was and you were unwilling to do anything about it. And when I saw that come into a head, I just knew that if somebody was going to do something about it, it had to be me. And I would be at least willing to stand up and be the first one through the wall, get the one that had all the bruises, right?
Yeah, well, that was actually going to be one of my questions here tonight. I was going to ask you specifically, uh, what was your take on the voter fraud? Excuse me, everybody. Sneeze. But what was your take on the voter fraud in 2020? And I think you just answered that. You said you either got to believe that it occurred or it didn't occur. And I've had many conversations with you. I know your answer to that, Brett. So why don't you just clarify it? Just what is your answer? Do you believe that election fraud occurred in 2020?
Well, I mean, when you see evidence from Ruby Freeman, they're bringing suitcase after suitcase out from under the table and running the ballots over and over and over again. Who's holding somebody accountable for it? If we lose confidence in our voting system, we lose our country. And the mere fact that our current representative is not representing us and saying there was no such thing as it was the most secure election ever in Georgia, I think is the biggest slap in the face to every patriot there is. And it is so asinine, it's not funny. So you see that, you see the drop boxes. There were 16 people in a 24-hour period that dropped off 16,000 ballots. Proven on video. Nothing's happening. It is a slap in the face to our democracy. And if we don't do something about it, if we don't start voting these people out, then we're not going to have a state anymore. It's going to be the next California.
Well, Brett. I mean, and I think you're right. And I was deeply involved in the 2020 election as a member of the state party, and we did poll watching and we did ballot verification and all kinds of different things, and we personally witnessed irregularities, and we did affidavits and reported them, and spoke with the GOP attorneys, and it basically came down to, even though the state GOP has evidence that things occurred, it's not being able to get those things heard in front of a judge because they won't allow the cases to go forward. And I've heard several different individuals running for Secretary of State talk about different things we need to do, but definitely, I think you're right that our state legislators, they dropped the ball on this. They decided to do nothing, and I think a lot of them are going to get challenged in the near future. Now, you were originally going to run for state district 25, and then the redistricting occurred, and now you're in District 17. Now, do you believe that the legislature could have done a better job with this redistricting, or do you feel maybe they did some of this to favor some of their elected ones that are incumbents now, that they felt needed a little boost, or they wouldn't be able to get elected in their current home districts?
No, I 100% agree with that. And a lot of these guys served 8, 10 years in their seats in those districts. And the fact that they can't get reelected the way it was before should show you that they weren't serving their districts. If they would have been serving their districts, they would have been running unopposed for a long time. Why would somebody challenge somebody that's serving their district properly? Unless they just had more money and more time on their hands, right? But the way I look at it is, most of these politicians, when they get into office, starting from day one, they're more interested in getting reelected than they are serving, right? If you do a good enough job, you don't have to worry about getting reelected. If that's what you're called to do, it'll all take care of itself. But if you're more focused on raising money or getting reelected, then you're not doing your job you were elected to do in the first place. So the reason that it was redistricting was so interesting this time, to say the least, was because of the amount of gerrymandering that had to happen for some of these rhinos to keep their positions. And again, uh, uh, it is embarrassing as a conservative to see that some of these conservatives, quote unquote, the only thing conservative about them is the R next to their name on the ballot box. I mean, they are tried and true rhinos, and it's sickening. And when you start looking and you start pulling behind the veil, you pull the veil back, and you start seeing that the Republicans and the Democrats aren't too different in a lot of these cases. That's what's frustrating to me. They're not representing the true conservative core of this state and this district the way it should be. The only reason they're running as a Republican is they think that's the only way they can get elected. But in reality, they don't. They're more Democrat than they are Republican in the first place.
Well, Brett, I think there was an article a few months ago that one of the top conservative consulting firms in the state was advising individuals for the last decade to actually run as Republicans in Republican leaning districts rather than Democrats because they couldn't get elected. And this is supposedly a conservative consulting firm. So if you're a conservative consulting firm and you're advising Democrats to run as Republicans, then you're not really a conservative consulting firm. You're a green consulting firm because you're
Right.
only concerned about money. I mean, and that's another thing too. I mean, it's just the establishment. And when I refer to the establishment as the elected officials, the consulting groups, and the lobbyists, that whole machine is revolved around reelecting incumbents, and they try to shut challengers out. And that's one of the questions I want to ask you is: do you believe that sitting House members, sitting senators, and a governor and lieutenant governor, and all of the constitutional officers, do you believe that they should have challenges every election year, or should they just ride through unchallenged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way I look at it is, I fully expect to get elected. Okay, and when I get elected, I expect to have challengers because that holds me accountable. Right? It has new ideas that come to the forefront. We always need to have better ideas coming, right? There's going to be somebody better than me one day that comes along. And that's the best thing for the district, and that's the best thing for the state. People aren't meant to go up there. And I know the governor has a term, right? I get that. But these guys are not supposed to go up there and stay for 20 years. They're not supposed to go up there and stay for as long of a period as they can just to gain more and more power. That's not what it's meant to be, right? If the national was set up to where these guys go and they serve and they go back home, I know that was never what some of these newer guys want to do, but our founding fathers set it up that way. The state house sure shouldn't be that way, right? It doesn't pay enough for them to be able to do this as a full-time job, right? Unless there's corruption.
$17,000.
$17,000. $17,000. But I believe that every election, there should be a challenger. I really hope that that's the case. But in the fact that these guys try to coerce people not to run, threaten people not to run, any way that they can manipulate the system to stack it in their favor so they can hold on to power, right? That means that they weren't doing their job in the first place. If you're doing your job, right, you should be able to win an election hands down. It's my take on it.
Brett, there was a letter that that a lot of us saw on social media, and we've got emails about some of us, that 25 of our 34 Republican legislators in the state Senate sent a letter to David Perdue asking David Perdue not to run for governor and to actually support Brian Kemp. So, and when and what I've been told, and actually I know this, that some of the individuals that actually signed that letter before that letter was made public and leaked were stating they never signed such a letter.
Mm.
But you've seen the letter, have you not, on social media? And the
have.
letter actually has their individual signature and it has their Senate district beside their name. So if you can't read their name, you can definitely, if you can't tell the chicken scratch, every one of them that I looked at, you can make out what Senate district they're from. So, we had 25 sitting Georgia state senators who oppose anybody having the ability to run against somebody if they're a sitting individual, because these same individuals have had individuals on their behalf scouring the state trying to get people like you not to run for office
Mhm.
against sitting senators. And that's part of the flaw in the system, is when we can't have guys like you and they try to dissuade you guys from running, then they don't really try and do a very good job in the legislature. And that's what I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about. This is the last 2 decades we've had supposedly conservative legislature, a less conservative legislature, and we've
Mhm.
had a Republican governor. Yet we have failed to pass two key conservative pieces of legislation. We have failed to pass a Religious Liberties Act, and we have failed to pass constitutional carry. So, as a state senator, would you support constitutional carry?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was out of the country as recently on business, and one of the guys was talking about some issues about uh, um, with guns. He said if everybody's carrying guns, then is there a lot of shootings? I was like, no, actually, there's less because you have they don't know who has a weapon and who doesn't, so not everybody's a victim, right? So if they don't know who has a gun, then not everybody's a sitting duck. Okay. Now, I think that with good training and good responsibility, right? We should all be able to carry that any kind of weapon we need to within legal rights. In Religious Freedom Act, no one should be able to tell us who we should be able to. If something is against your principal beliefs in your religion, you should not be forced one way or the other to do so. I think that if we lose that in our core principles, right, then we start losing a lot of our other basic freedoms. We don't have the our freedom of speech that's guaranteed upon us.
Brett, I've heard you speak a couple of times, and during those times, I've heard you talk about a certain subject, and I have a similar take on this subject as you do, and not a lot of people believe the way we believe, but they should believe the way we believe, and I really want people to hear it from your own mouth tonight. Your take on separation of church and state.
Mm. So that's a good question. So when our forefathers set up our Constitution, um, the foundation is on Christian principles, right? The Declaration of Independence itself makes reference to God 5 separate times. Okay. So our foundation is strong biblically, very strong. The problem is the structure itself, as it started growing, right? It got a little um, um, lopsided certain ways. The structure started to dilapidate, right? Started to erode. The foundation's strong, but I think the structure needs to be demolished a little. But when it comes to separation of church and state, it was meant to keep the state out of the church, not the church out of the state, right? We need to get the church back in the government. People that have strong biblical principles need to be the ones that are helping guide the course of the state, of the local, of the federal government. The problem is the misunderstanding is that the church doesn't want to get involved in the government because it's too dirty. But that's the time that we need to get in there. We need to clean it up. We need to shine a light on the corruption and the darkness, right? Darkness is the void of light. As Christians, we're supposed to be the light. We're supposed to let our light shine before men so they can see your good deeds and give glory to your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16, my favorite verse. But with that, that helps expose darkness. The light that we cast as Christians, it exposes the darkness. Okay? We need to have people with biblical principles, not saying they're Christians, men and women with backbones, right? That stand on the word of God, getting out there and helping to make sure that we're cultivating the future, not relying on people that are Christians in names only, like Republicans in name only, right? We need to make
Right.
sure that we're doing what God has called us to do and help lead the next generation. Because if we rely on other people who don't have Christian principles to guide our laws, to guide our the next generation, they're not going to be doing it in a way that God is intended.
I mean, I can't believe, and I really like that the way you phrase it is that it was intended to keep the government out of church, not keep the church out of government, because our national motto is "In God We Trust."
Right.
And they're look at the money, the money. It's in God we. I mean, so God is all over the Constitution. God is all over the founding fathers' principles. So it is apparent that our founding fathers, based the foundation of this great land on Christian values. So to see what I think the courts are trying to do now is just it's a problem, and we really need to look at that, and we need to elect men of strong Christian values to office like yourself, so that we can fight back and push back against that wave. So Brett, you're going to win this seat, and when you win this seat, what are three key pieces of legislation that you think you need to work on your first term?
Yeah. Well, two of them you already touched on. I think the Religious Freedom Act, constitutional carry. One thing I'm sick and tired of is, looking at how the government is spending our tax money. The comment I hear a lot is that when the government's giving most of our money away to people, other countries, and everything, then they're taxing the citizens too much. I think if I travel around a lot for business in the area, if Tennessee can do without a state income tax, Florida can do without a state income tax. You have Texas. We should be able to do the same thing here in Georgia, right? I think that with better stewardship, and it doesn't have to be property taxes. It doesn't even have to be on sales taxes. There's creative ways that we can do to make sure that we're not taxing the ones that are the most productive. We need to put more money in people's pockets, especially with inflation going up, and especially with the Fed, that with the federal government just spending our money haphazardly. We have to be able to make sure that we're able to put more money in people's pockets, who are actually the backbone of this country. So those would be the top three things that I would focus on. I'm not saying it would be limited to those. I think we need less laws and not more laws. That's one thing that's frustrating to me. I think that we need to start focusing on what's best for the people in this state. Um, you know, Doing away with CRT and holding people accountable if they are teaching CRT in our schools, or critical race theory is horrible for race relations, for our country in general, especially for this district. And they've softened it by calling it ESL, emotional social learning, but it's the same thing. And if we don't start doing away with that now and holding people accountable who are teaching that, then we're going to slippery slope towards California.
Well, Brett, you mentioned education, so we're gonna go there. So,
Okay.
you know, uh, we've locally, you look at how the local school districts are doing in this region. We're not knocking it out of the park. Georgia ranks 34th among the 50 states, so we're in the bottom second tier. So, so if if Georgia's competing in the job market and for these companies coming to Georgia and different infrastructure stuff, and we don't have what these companies feel or the individuals that can fill these slots, then they're going to bring people from elsewhere in to fill those slots, and you're not going to have Georgians holding those jobs. So,
Right.
I mean, over in your neck of the woods, there's some big economic development stuff that's just happened with that electric car plant, correct? Well, electric truck, right?
Right.
So, and the jury's still out, Brett, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing,
Hmm.
because you know what I mean, because you're bringing something like that to a rural community. It's going to probably employ a quarter of the amount of what the population of the county is now that the place is coming to. I mean, that's the place it's going to come to. So that could change the surface of a county forever. And is it for the good or for the bad? I think that'll yet to be determined what that is. But I mean, you live in that community. I mean, did they come and talk to you guys about bringing that into your community, or did it just they just come and say, "Hey, we're bringing it next door to your house"? And I mean, yeah, did they have any community meetings about bringing that into your community? Because that's your community.
They touted it as the most secretive large deal they've ever landed in Georgia. So they were very proud how quiet it was and whatnot. But what I do know is a lot of times in these situations, they'll be under contract to employ a certain number of people locally. But with that, there's a stipulation that they have to be qualified people. So it could be engineers, it could be very specialized qualification, and all they have to say is, "Oh yeah, there was nobody qualified, so we don't have to reach that quota of numbers." So we'll employ a janitor here and somebody over here to watch the gate, and that's great for those people. The problem is that the population growth can be so high that it puts demand on our infrastructures and our resources, and that's tough. So some of these people may or may not live in our district. It may cause our property taxes to skyrocket. So as you said, maybe it's great, maybe it's horrible. We don't know until time. All I can say is it would have been nice as a constituent of this district to at least have been kept in the know and let our voices be heard and heard why this might be a good thing. Then again, I mean, I do know if the governor wanted this to happen one way or the other, he could have used eminent domain and taken the land. So who's to say that it wasn't going to happen one way or the other?
You're right. I mean, it probably was going to happen one way or the other. But my concern about a lot of, and it's just like in all these counties, if you notice when all these big deals happen, it was the biggest secret since the beginning of time. Nobody in the community knows about it, and then they just spring it on you. This great thing has happened in your community, but the community itself was not involved in this great thing that was coming to their community. And
Right.
that's where I see that we have gone astray, Brett, is we've got to involve the people in the community where these things are coming to so that they can prepare for it. And I'm just going to ask, because we touched on property taxes and such, and these things coming and property values skyrocketing. And there's where I think, where we have our local officials and we depend on them to protect our senior citizens. And I would like to see our state legislature protect our senior citizens.
Mhm.
Um, I would like to see our state legislature pass legislation to enact a statewide uh, uh, um, moratorium or seniors not to pay property tax, property school taxes. And
Mhm.
definitely when they start getting so old to start phasing them out. I mean, I think anyone 70 years old, 72 years old does not need to be paying school property tax. So I think the only two ways that can be done is through local legislation or a constitutional amendment. But then when you talk to state officials a lot of times and senators, well, we need to deal with that on the local level. Well, they'll want to throw that to you on the local level, but they didn't want to throw to you the fact that they were bringing this plant here that's going to cause those property taxes to escalate on those seniors. I mean, do you think seniors on a fixed income are going to be able to afford the property taxes that are going to escalate in that area, Brett? Do you
No,
think
and
they
it's
can?
sickening because you have people that have paid on a mortgage for 30 years and they finally paid it off and they're so excited right at the time of retirement. So maybe they're only getting Social Security or they're getting a small pension, right? But with inflation going up so much and grocery bills doubling, if not tripling, right? Now you're having people that their property taxes used to be maybe $1,000, $1,500 with the land cost going up now because people are trying to buy up around the plant or buy land nearby, build larger houses. So now their house, which was more conservative, right? There it may go on up to $4,500, right? So now with gas costs going up almost, 2.5 times what they were a year and a half ago. Now, what you'll see if we're not careful and we don't take care of our senior citizens is they're going to have to sell their property because they can't afford the property taxes. Or, God forbid, they do some kind of reverse mortgage, which is horrible for them and for their asset. That's their largest asset a lot of people will ever have is their home. And the fact that they're going to have to sell their home to pay taxes is disgusting to me. After their whole life, they've paid taxes on everything they bought, everything they've earned, and now they have to sell their house, which they've raised children in, raised grandchildren in, have all these fond memories. They're going to have to sell that because the government's greed. There's no other way around it. It's
No,
government greed.
and the government agreed, and that's why I believe that our seniors should be protected, and that the state legislature should pass legislation mandating, and they have the authority, that when you get a certain age, that you are froze out. You are no longer obligated. And Brent, it's just a temporary thing because I mean we all have got to realize we've got an expiration date on us.
Right.
If I say at 70 years old you're not paying taxes anymore, I think the or we age out now at around 78 years old. So you got 8 to 10 years you're not going to pay anything, and then when you pass and that property goes to someone else, then that property goes back into the tax market, and people start paying taxes. It will be a cyclish thing that occurs. That property will not be off the for average 10 years would be the long term that one of those pieces of properties would probably be not taxed before the person passed away, and it would go to someone who would not qualify. So I mean, a lot of places do that right now, and I think Georgia needs to take care of their senior citizens. And I'm glad to hear that somebody like you getting elected to office, that you would be concerned and you would be wanting to take care of our senior citizens, which I think is one of our most valuable assets.
Absolutely. As are the senior citizens themselves. The amount of knowledge that they can pass on, and instead of there's people that cast them aside, and it completely infuriates me because the amount of knowledge, if we would just open our ears and listen and hear about what the times were like in World War II and Vietnam and what they had to go through, history repeats itself. And if we don't take care of those and we learn from their knowledge, because the history books are being demolished as we speak, statues are being torn down left and right. I mean, the Tuskegee Airmen statue was just vandalized by Black Lives Matter. Tuskegee Airmen, right? I
Yep.
mean, there's no remorse for any statues anymore, regardless what they stood for, right? It's all about how do we tear down history? How do we tear down what our founding fathers and our founders built for us? How do we make it to where we start fresh, right? And if we don't learn from our past, then the past is bound to happen again.
And it will. And then some of our viewers are actually commenting that they think it's a great idea about the tax break for seniors, and to the point that it's just a temporary tax break on that property, because that property will recycle and go back, into the hands of someone who will start paying taxes on it again. Hey, Mike and Dan, who knows when I'm, 10 years from now, I may run for governor. It could happen. You never know. So, it's just, but, that's why we've got to think out of the box, and we need to elect new people to office like Brett, because the same people in office, they don't come up with new ideas. They really don't. They recycle the same thing. And it takes a new generation, and it takes new people to come in to get elected, to be brave enough to try new things, especially people like Brett. Because, Brett, you've mentioned something to me before. You say, hey, if I get elected this time and I don't get elected in 2 years, it's not going to hurt my feelings. You've actually said that. And I was like, all right, that was pretty bold. So why don't you talk about, what your prospect is if you get elected, and how you think that should go?
As far as what, if I get elected?
Like term limits and stuff. I mean, how you feel about how many terms
Oh,
you should serve and that kind of thing.
absolutely. I look at everything should be the same. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. Maybe not right now, but in general, in just general terms, if they're only allowed to serve 8 years, then that should be the term limit on any position, right? So my take is the most I would ever serve is 8 years. I feel that I was called into the political arena against my will. I did not want to do politics. I don't like politicians and I don't trust them. But when I look at it, being able to serve is a responsibility and an honor. And if we don't treat it that way, it is how can we serve other people and not be served? So knowing that um, uh, the term limit of 8 years as a state senator or state representative, it should be mandated. If you go any higher, any longer than that, I mean, you're you're not bringing new, fresh ideas. It's only about ego, and in my opinion, it's only about ego and your own power trip. I mean, just to be blunt.
Well, Brett, this is the thing about I want to miss, because one of our listeners just asked the question. They came in late and they don't know who you're running against. So I'm going to tell them a little bit of but Brett is running against Brian Strickland, the Senate 17 senator, which we all know Brian here. Most of the viewers do, because he represents them right now. But as of next year, he will, as of January 23. Rockdale County will not be in Senate 17. Rockdale County will only be in Senate 43. Rockdale County we currently have 6 state House members right now. With redistricting, we only have 4 House members. Rockdale County has 2 Republican representatives right now, but with the way redistricting has occurred, Rockdale County will have no Republican representation. Rockdale County was redistricted out. That way they originally explained the way they were going to redistrict 17 is they was going to take 17 and move it south. They were going to take Rockdale and Newton out, and they were going to move it south toward Butts and Monroe and that way. But they decided not to do that, do a little curve move with it. They kept Newton County in. When they kept Newton County in, they could have kept Rockdale County in 17. They could have kept 2 precincts of Rockdale County in 17. They could have kept Magnet and Honey Creek, and Rockdale County, which has over 14 to 20,000 Republican voters, could have still had a Republican representative representing them. But this is what Republicans do when they disenfranchise their own. They did the same thing to DeKalb County. Has no Republican representation now. DeKalb County has over 100,000 Republican voters with no Republican representation because of redistricting. Philip Singleton down in Fayette County, they redistricted him. I don't think he can win his House seat now. One of the most conservative House members and staunch fighters of conservative values in the state House was taken out solely because House Speaker Ralston did not appreciate him challenging him occasionally. So, fans, our own, Republicans were in charge of redistricting, and we didn't do our own self any favors in a lot of these districts. But, that's what we said. Brett was originally going to run in Senate District 25, and because they maneuvered it the way they did it. And now he's in Senate 17. Um, and it took a little bit of work to do that because really logic. I mean, when you look at it, the map, it doesn't make sense for Senate 17 to be in Morgan County, does it, Brett? To be honest.
Not a bit.
But that's something we all have to live with. That's the law of the land. It will be when the legislature takes session and Governor Kent signs that bill. It will be the law of the land, and it's what we have to deal with for 10 years. So for the next 10 years, then Morgan County, Walton County, Newton County, and Henry County will be 17. And and 60 to 70% of that district is new people. Would that not be correct, Brett? They were not part of 17 before.
That's correct. 70%.
And you've got people who are, they don't, they had a senator in a district that they liked and felt comfortable with. And because they wanted to make sure some other folks could get elected, they changed those districts. Well, somebody asked how much did the census play? This, in my opinion, the census didn't play much in this. It was how they wanted to maneuver it to get who they wanted elected. That's what it came down to more than the census.
Or because the district that person was in, our state senator won by half a percentage point against a socialist Democrat. Half a percentage point. That's how little of a difference you could tell between the two. So They stacked it with a very conservative area because they didn't think that the person could get reelected. And that's what you're up against. I mean, when it all boils down to it, you have somebody that could barely beat a socialist Democrat, right? Against me, who is very conservative in every aspect of my life. I have a backbone and I'm not scared to stand up against anybody because when it's all said and done, everything I have on this earth is borrowed anyway. I'm not taking any of it with me, right? But I got to look my 3 kids in the eyes and my beautiful wife in her eyes and know that I did everything I could to fight for our futures. And if I'm not willing to do that, I'd rather, in the old phrase that I would rather die standing than live my life on my knees. And that's where I'm at right now. I truly want to fight for the future of Georgia and for this district because there's no way in my mind anyone can convince me that this is a blue state. This is the furthest thing from a blue state. The people I talk to on a day-to-day basis, the people I engage with are some of the most conservative people there are, right? And I know that even the Democrats that I engage with on a regular basis, they're not this new wave of socialist Democrat that we see. Because I can get along with anybody, including Democrats. I can't get along with socialists. Socialism is admitting that you cannot compete in the marketplace and you need somebody else to take care of you. That's point blank, as blunt as you can make it. That is saying I am not useful in the marketplace and I need somebody who is useful in the marketplace to take care of me so I don't have to do anything. That's it.
Well, Brett, this is the way and I told some people at the Republican Party meeting the other day that that I felt you were going to get elected to this office, and I felt that Rockdale County would have a friend in Senate 17 with Brett Malden. That even though 17 wouldn't be in Rockdale anymore, that Rockdale would have a friend with you in the state Senate. And,
100%.
And what I feel is anybody out there tonight that wants to help and volunteer and do things with the campaign, I'll be putting stuff out there because I'm going to be full disclosure with the folks here. I am actually going to be working on Brett's campaign with Brett. So, I got to know Brett, talk to Brett. I believe in his candidacy. I believe in the things that he's talking about and wants to do. And I believe that Senate 17 needs a true conservative representing the 17th. And I will be 100% helping Brett and being with him side by side this whole fight to get him elected to the state senate here in 22.
I greatly appreciate everything you've brought to the table and your knowledge and your energy. It's a plethora of knowledge, and greatly appreciate your efforts.
And I'm grateful to do it. But Brett, you've got a website and everything now, right? And on your website, people can go there and volunteer and give their information, correct?
That's correct.
Why
Yeah.
don't you give that information right now to the folks, and then that way we can have them start going and reaching out to the website and offering to volunteer. And we will have signs after the first of the year. We're going to start doing social media after the first of the year. We're going to start doing mailers after the first. I mean, you're going to see this man's name all over the place after the first of the year, and then we want you to spread that name after the first of the year. So what I would like my listeners to do, if you guys would please, when he gives you the name of the Facebook page and such, go to that page and like and share that page so that we can start growing his page and spread the word and the message. Brett, tell them where they can go reach you at.
Yeah. So our website is Vote Brett BRET Malden MAULDIN. So that's votebrettmalden.com. And our Facebook page is Brett Malden for State Senate. We would love for you to add us and to follow us. We'll have information that we'll be adding on a regular basis. We want to engage with you. If you have questions, even if my district doesn't serve you, I still serve the state of Georgia. So as Larry was saying earlier, that's what we're here to do. We're trying to make Georgia better. And if it's one person can't do it all, okay, I may be the one that's going to be going on the ballot to run, but it's not about me. It's not about one person. This is about Georgia. It's about how do we want to get the good guys in office and the bad guys out of office. And if we do that as many times as possible, then the state will be a much better place. So that's our focus. How do we get the good guys in, bad guys out, right? And I say that, as a friend of mine would say from the military, big hand, small picture, right? It's a broad stroke, but we want to get the best quality conservative people in there that represent our values. So again, I would greatly appreciate any of your help. It is votebrettmalden.com. Please reach out. My contact information's on there. If you have comments, thoughts, questions, I would love to answer those. Reach out to us on the Facebook page.
Is the Facebook page Vote Brett Malden?
Let's see here. It is Brett Malden for State Senate. Yeah.
That's what it is. The Facebook is Brett Malden for State Senate.
Yes.
Dan, go ahead and write that up there too, since you did the website. We'll let Dan go ahead and be our official. Put it online for us. So if you'll do that for us, Dan, let everybody know. Well, I greatly appreciate that. So we want everybody to go to Brett's Facebook page, go to his website, go on there, give the information. Let's do everything that we can to help Brett get his message out there and share what we can share. And like I said, after the first of the year, we're going to, at some point, within the middle of the month, we're going to have signs and paraphernalia we're going to be putting out there, and we'll be organizing events, and we'll be asking for volunteers to come out and help campaign, because there's going to be a big move this year, guys, where patriots like Brett are going to be facing the establishment political process. And the establishment political process is both Democrat and Republican. It's an entity all on its own, because those folks that are entrenched, the establishment, they don't want people from the outside getting elected, because they like the status quo the way it is. So what Brett and folks like Brett are going to do is they're going to shake this system up because we're going to have a lot of people running against incumbents, and the incumbents are going to be rattled. We will probably have the most conservative legislative session we've had in 10 years this coming year. But we've all got to remember they're only going to do it because they're afraid. Because if we don't show them at the ballot box that it meant something, they'll just go back to the same old ways after this election. Do you not agree, Brett?
Yeah, and I was born on Pearl Harbor Day, right? So I always it always stuck out to me that the Japanese general once said after they bombed Pearl Harbor, they said, "I'm afraid that we've awakened a sleeping giant." And I think that that's what the establishment is the most afraid of, and they should be terrified because they've awoken people that just wanted to be left alone, and they wouldn't leave us alone. And at that point, they've awakened a giant that's been sleeping for a long time, and we've been asleep at the wheel. And now, guys, it is time for us to take this state back over and to do what we've been called to do as patriots, as Christians, and as Georgians. It is time for us to take this legislature back over and to fight for this state so that we can fight for this country. It starts at the state level. We have so much power at the state level. So much power. The federal will try to make you think it's not, but there's a lot of power in the state, and we're going to do everything we can to keep as much power in the state as we can and take power back from the federal and put it back in the state's hands. I don't
Yeah,
want the federal government telling me how to raise my kids.
don't you agree, Brett? It's Georgia first, America first. Just like President Trump's policy of America first, this is definitely, it's time to have Georgia first, America first.
100%.
You've got to put your people first. I agree with helping people that are in need all over the world, but you can't, when you're in an airplane, Brett, what do they tell you to do when first thing, if something happens, they say, put your oxygen mask on first, because if you're not able to breathe, then you can't help your neighbor. Do they not tell you that?
That's
So,
right.
so if you don't put yourself first where you're in a position to be able to help others, then you can't help feed those hungry people or those people that are in need somewhere else. You've got to help yourself first. So, I mean, it's Georgia first, America first, and I think that's a concept that the voters are going to have to just learn. We've got to help ourselves to help anybody else.
That's right.
So, Brett, I think we've had a good show tonight. I've enjoyed it. I hope our viewers have. Next week will be, Christmas will be on Saturday, but I will have a show on Sunday. I'll probably come on and talk some stuff about the Board of Education. My viewers love it when I bash the Board of Education in Rockdale County, Brett. So I think that's probably what we're going to do. We're going to do a little Board of Education bashing next week. And while we're at it, we might as well do a little Board of Commission bashing. So we'll find some things to bash those folks about. And I know you guys are going to, hey, and Tommy Lee, while we're at it, we might find something about the sheriff too, because Tommy Lee loves it when we dig up something on the sheriff. So we'll look at getting local with Rockdale after Christmas, and and just enjoying that. And with you guys, just remember, go to those websites, go to that Facebook page, and reach out to Brett's site, and let's support him. So, guys, I'll tell you what, we will see you next week on This Week from Rockdale with Larry Cox. Brett, just hold on after we sign off.